Very good. So hello everyone, welcome. Nice to be here with you now. We at Oak seem to have angered the technology gods lately. So we've had a string of technical problems. The technical problem that we are currently dealing with that has come to us this week is that the person who is in charge of dealing with our technical problems is stuck in traffic on the Bay Bridge. Um, so, you know, it's a good demonstration of what the point of this week's talk is about, actually. I feel as though if we just set up the technology in the right way, then everything will be okay. But it turns out there are still bridges and people with bodies and other people with other bodies. And if all of them want to go across a bridge at the same time, then that's not going to go so quickly. So, or if some of them don't want others to go across the bridge. I don't know exactly what the deal is, but in any case, here we are. We're all together. Let's celebrate that. It's extremely unlikely and extremely fortunate. And so let's celebrate that first by sitting together and not doing anything. So, and by not doing anything, you can obviously do anything you need to do in your space, take care of things around you, help people out and such, but let's spend this time meditating, practicing, and doing as little as possible. to do as little as possible may have meant that we have done quite a lot. We may have had to adjust our physical circumstances. I just got up and got a bell to close this period with. It may also mean that we adjust our bodies and our state of mind to allow this practice to have a clear container. And we sit together, doing what we must do and not doing anything else. As we do this, sitting together, hearing sounds, seeing sights, feeling body sensations, thinking thoughts, just allow all of this to happen. Letting this breath fill our bodies without having to do anything about it. Maybe that we sit here and it's all just simple. We're not doing anything. Everything's allowed to happen. But if we would like, it's always an option to pick something to do, to focus on, as a way of allowing everything to happen. So if you like, you can focus at this time on the breath, rise and fall in your belly. And this one simple task, bringing our attention to the breath and laying it on the breath. So at this time, the instruction is either do nothing at all or attend to the breath. And if it's hard to stop doing anything, then stop trying to stop doing that thing. Just easygoing, simple practice. Sounds come and go, sensations come and go, thoughts come and go. Don't have to do anything about any of that. Okay, so nice to be here with you all. Thought that maybe we would start with introductions. We decided last week the job of Zev, who is currently stuck on the Bay Bridge, so I'll do it. Uh, actually, Anna, can you do it? You just run through the list of people and say people's names in order so that everyone goes in order. Is that possible? Maybe I'll have to do it. Yes, Mom.
Hi, everyone. Joshin, what would you like the prompt to be?
Let's say our name and a smell that we have smelled in the last day.
Okay, would you go first, please?
Sure. So I'm Joshin, and I smelled incense earlier today.
Thank you. I'm Renee, and I smelled rain today. And then let's go to the oak room. I see Hoshin. Can
Mm.
you unmute? You had it.
Yeah, they were unmuted for a bit.
Can you hear us now?
There we are.
There we are.
Ah! Oh!
Hello?
Hi.
So
So,
oak.
would you guys self-organize and go around the room?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'm Hoshin. And earlier this week, in response to seeing a picture of a dog on Instagram, I smelled wet dog. Like smell in.
My name is Keller, and earlier today, filling up some cleaning supplies, I smelled, what was that,
Tea tree oil.
Tea tree oil, essential oil. That was intense.
I'm Anna. Earlier today, I smelled a new type of incense, which was surprising.
I am Koshin, and I smelled tea.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I also smelled tea. It was a white tea with lotus blossom.
Hmm. Does that account for all of Oak?
As of in this room, yes.
Great. Thank you. So, Gergely?
I'm Gergely, and today I smelled vanilla, which was a pastry that I baked yesterday.
Thank you. Margaret?
Hi, I'm Margaret, and I just came from the pool, so all I can smell is chlorine.
Richard?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rich in second floor Akron, and I'm at a loss for words on smell. I'm pulled to a lovely smell on a bike ride, and it's a very fragrant leaf this time of year.
I hope that downstairs Akron isn't as unstable internet as upstairs.
Downstairs
Could we
Akron's
go
good.
to- Good. Johnny?
Hello, earlier this evening I had some vanilla yogurt, so vanilla is the taste for me.
Great. Kathleen?
Hi, I'm Kathleen, and I recently smelled Western red cedar while I was trimming it.
Thank you. Christine? Unmute?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Christine, and I smelled a Christmas candle that was from last year, and it was called Calm, while I was unpacking a Christmas decorations and Hanukkah decoration box. And it was very calming smell.
Nice. Thank you. Lynn and Bob?
Hello, everyone. We are in Pennsylvania where it's pretty cold today, but we are nurturing a lemon tree that was my father's in our garage. And we picked a lemon the other day, and this morning cut the lemon, and it was a wonderful smell, very fragrant smell, and definitely a reminder of my father.
Lovely.
And I am cooking, and my hands are full of herbs.
Great. Morgan, oh, Morgan can hear now. Good. So let's call on Morgan. But we can't hear you, Morgan. So I'll come back to you. Oh, there you are.
Yeah,
The
I'm
prompt
curious.
is say your name and a smell that you've smelled recently.
Okay. My name is Morgan, and I was just out at a campfire, so I am smelling smoke in the recent past and in the present.
Nice. Thank you. Sam?
I'm Sam, and earlier today I smelled the subtle odor that emits from used books.
Nice. Thank you. Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I had dumplings earlier today and I smelled a lot of soy sauce.
Great. And Rob?
I'm Rob, and I recently smelled my bassoon, the sweet finish on the wood.
Nice. I won't tell you what Frank Zappa says about the bassoon, and I'll ask Pam to go next.
I'm Pam, and I've been internally smelling everything you guys have been saying except for bassoon. You got me on that one. But I was just on a walk and picked some plumeria leaves, flowers off of the ground, and so I'm smelling that still.
Thanks, Pam. Rose?
Hello. So good to be here. So I got a COVID test today, so I'm still kind of like smelling that, but it's amazing what the imagination can do, because right when I heard plumeria, my mind went to plumeria, and during the COVID test, I was imagining that there was like the test was a rose vine, and then I was smelling roses. So that was kind of nice, and a really kind of clever technique I recommend.
Well done. I don't know if there's anyone at the other Oak mic, so I will assume not and go to Yanir. And if there is someone, tell me later. Yanir, you're up.
Hi everyone, Yanir. I did some cleanup today, vacuuming, so smelled a lot of dust and all the other normal cleaning smells.
Thank you. Mom, out.
All right, thank you, Mom. Very much appreciated. Helping us work around our technical difficulties. This is actually really nice. My mom is helping me with a issue with technology. Things have come full circle. To sort of nice, be on the other side of all of that time spent programming computers. Finally have graduated to technical incompetence. So I feel proud and happy. So I think it's a good segue into the topic today. So I believe the topic wound up being relating to thinking. And this may seem a little bit of a diversion or digression from where we are in terms of the text and also what we've been talking about so far today, but I anyway think that it isn't very much of a digression. So I'll try to see if we can get there. So for anyone who's unfamiliar, we've been going through a certain text, the Anāthapiṇḍika Sutta, Anāthapiṇḍada Sutra in Sanskrit. This is part of the Pali canon, the collected sayings of the Buddha. And this text in particular is a kind of instruction manual for a householder who is very deeply devoted to the Buddha, someone who is unusually caring in terms of the sort of care that comes as material support to the Buddha historically. In fact, this individual is Anāthapiṇḍika is the Buddha's chief male patron. So among men, among that half of the population roughly, he is considered the foremost patron, opposed to the Buddha's chief female patron, who, if I'm not mistaken, is named Visakha, but someone can please correct me on that if I'm wrong. So he's very dedicated to the Buddha and to the Buddha's organization and teaching, has done a lot to support the monks, and has over a long time developed a close and intimate relationship with them. That's part A. And then B is dying. This text takes place near the end of his life. He's, at the time that this text is written, or at the time that it took place rather, gravely ill, sick, suffering, and sort of on his deathbed. So this being the case, he's called in the Buddha's chief disciple, Shariputra, to offer a lesson on the Dharma. This is already remarkable. He's at the end of his life and he doesn't want to trouble the Buddha. Doesn't want to take the Buddha's time with having the Buddha himself come and give an instruction. So he asks specifically for Shariputra rather than the Buddha. He says, Shariputra, could you please come over and teach? Go to the Buddha, let him know that I'm in the situation, and then ask Shariputra to come and teach me. Very unusual level of humility or something. I don't know if humility is even quite the right word for it, but something. There's an unusual level of something there. And so Shariputra has come to his house, to his bedside, to offer instruction. He's asked, exchanged small talk niceties, said, I hope you're improving, your illness is getting better, hope things are going well for you. And Anāthapiṇḍika has replied, no, it's not. That's not how it is. It isn't the case that my illness is improving. It's actually getting worse. The increase and not the decrease of the pain and suffering that I'm experiencing is apparent. And so Shariputra then says, in that case, householder, here's how you should train. And so Shariputra has already gone through, as we've discussed in the prior weeks of this series, you might say, first part, introduction or beginning of this practice instruction, in which Shariputra has advised Anāthapiṇḍika to train thus. Train so that he does not cling to anything, anywhere that can be perceived. And his consciousness does not depend on any of that. So train so that you don't cling to the eye. The organ, the eye, and your consciousness doesn't depend on the eye. Train so that you don't depend on the ear and your consciousness doesn't depend on the ear, and so on and so forth. Going through, in fact, all of the sense organs and all of the sense phenomena. And everything in terms of experience, at least according to the Buddhist system, as I currently understand it, that unfolds from that. So he's already said, don't train yourself so that your consciousness doesn't depend on any of those things, anything that can be seen, heard, felt, smelled, tasted, or cognized, so that your consciousness doesn't depend on any of that. So you don't grasp, you don't grab onto, you don't cling to, you don't remain holding to any of that. And the text will now continue. So Shariputra's instructions are not yet complete. He continues. That's already unusual and remarkable. What you might ask more is there? And what more there is so he next says, householder, you should train thus. I will not cling to the earth element, and my consciousness will not depend on the earth element. You should train yourself thus. I will not cling to the water element, and my consciousness will not depend on the water element. You should train yourself thus. I will not cling to the air element, and my consciousness will not depend on the air element. And you should train yourself thus. I will not cling to the fire element, and my consciousness will not depend on the fire element. So these four elements are sort of an ancient way of trying to describe or summarize, or maybe you might say divide up the material world. So there's this world of form of matter, and in ancient times in India, it was taken to be the case that it was made up of these four basic elements, these four basic properties. And this is also, I think, true in ancient times in Europe, although I'm less familiar with that. China has its own version of this with the five elements. So this was sort of a common way of looking at things at that time. And it seems to be the case that the Buddha, in his teaching, more or less just went with this. He didn't originate this way of talking about things, dividing things into these four elements. This was sort of what people were already doing at that time, and he just decided not to disagree with that. He decided to just take it and go with it and use that as his teaching. And so we have that form. So what's being said here is basically don't cling to anything in the material world, and train so that your consciousness doesn't depend on anything in the material world. And it's actually kind of interesting. I like to think about this sort of thing, and so I've spent a little bit of time trying to understand what people meant by this particular classification system. So, for example, the earth element means, of course, physical earth, like rocks and dirt and such. It refers to that. Also refers to anything solid or anything having mass. Or if you want, you could think about it as referring to the particle nature of phenomena. So something exists as a particle, exists as something that has a definite location, has mass, has matter, then that's earth. It's the earth element. Water, of course, is actual water itself, flowing down a river, you might imagine, or collecting in a lake, but also refers more generally to the principle of connectivity, of fluidity and flowingness. So it's water is flowing from one place to another place, and there's this sort of connectivity, or you might say wave nature, if you wanted to take it in that direction. So there's this wave nature and particle nature of phenomena. Earth is referring to the particle nature, water is referring to the wave nature. Fire then is referring actually to, obviously physical fire. You can light stuff on fire and it burns. And then also to metabolism. So in the body, there are processes that generate heat, and we sort of break down food. So all of that counts as the fire element. And then maybe, if you want to think about it in this way, you could say that the fire element refers as well to sort of thermodynamics in general. So time and change, the process of unfolding and changing over time. And then finally, the air element refers to air. Wave your hands in the air and you can feel the air somewhere else. So there's this process of movement and of more than that, expansion, filling a container and not being constrained to any place. So it's this sort of expansion, contraction, flow, freely moving. So that's air. And there are two more elements that I won't get to just yet. I'll set those aside for now and just focus on those four. So this is very interesting. Shariputra is saying, train thus. I will not cling to these four elements, and my consciousness will not depend on these four elements. So what does that mean? How does one do that? It's a good question. How would one train so that one doesn't cling to those four elements? So as a starting place, we may notice that as we heard that description of the elements, we had a bunch of thoughts. We talked about earth, and then we had the thought, earth. I know what earth is. Earth is this. And actually, I am earth. Earth is in my body, and I'm coming out of the earth. I am earth. Earth is me. I'm a part of the earth. The earth is a part of me. You may have had these thoughts. I certainly had these thoughts. Some of us may have had these thoughts. As we're hearing about the earth element, may have had these thoughts. Yes, earth. Earth is me. Or water. You have the sense of, yes, water. We can actually feel the water, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can feel the water flowing through your body right now, your blood. You can feel your heart beating, perhaps. You can feel water flowing through your body. And consider on feeling that, yes, the water element. This water is flowing through my body. This water is filling my body. I am the water is me. I am part of this great water element. This great water element is alive in this body right here. Think about it in these ways. Or fire, the sense, fire, metabolism, change, heat. That's what this is. That's what I am. This whole experience is time unfolding. And that's me. I am time. Time is me. I'm coming out of time. Time is connected with me. I'm a part of time. I'm unfolding in time. I have had that kind of thought. Or air, just expanding, just feeling this expansion in every moment. I am air. Air is filling my lungs. My lungs expand with every in-breath. My lungs contract with every out-breath. This air is within me. It's coming out of me. It's going into me. It is me. I am it. So wonderful, so amazing. So it's worth noticing just simply no more than that that's all thinking. It's worth noticing. So a lot of the time, people in my position say things and others hear things that we didn't say or don't hear things that we did say. And in particular, Shinzen, who's sort of an elder in our tradition, says that most of what we hear when we're listening to someone is either what we were afraid that person would say or what we wanted that person to say. So I'm going to try to say this again, and A, I might make a mistake, but B, please listen carefully. Just no more than simply attend to, be aware of the fact that all of that is thinking. The whole time we're considering this structure, this categorization system, this classification system, this way of considering the physical world and our, in fact, body and experience. All of that is being considered in thinking, with thinking. We are thinking about it. And simply notice that. So I have not said, and then feel bad because you think so much. Why do you think so much? You're a terrible person. I didn't say that. I didn't say feel bad. I didn't also say don't think. Yes, did not say notice that all of this is thinking and then stop it. I didn't say that, right? Notice that all of that is thinking and then, I don't know what else, but whatever else it is, just please bring it. I want to hear it. So let me know if any of that comes up, and especially let me know if there's something I said that was wrong, and also out of kindness, let me know if there was something I didn't say that you heard anyway, because it's likely that I may have been able to say it more clearly, and also likely that someone else in the room or someone else somewhere may have had a similar thought. So this is really significant. We have all of these thoughts, all of these ways of thinking about ourselves, and all of these ways of thinking about experience. Of course, in the modern world, we don't anymore identify with with that particular classification system, most of us anyway. It's generally the case that we aren't taught about it from a young age, and so it isn't quite as sticky for us, it isn't quite as deeply embedded. And so it's easy to see with that system, one of the nice features of that system, because it's so different from what we're used to, and yet has that element of truth to it, that element of, yes, that to it. We can see very clearly, okay, I'm thinking. What's going on as I consider myself to be the earth element is that I am thinking. It may, or may not, but it may be somewhat more difficult to see that same thing at play when we consider, for example, I am made up of oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and a few other trace elements. Yes? You know, the sense when we talk about that classification of elements, that there's something going on there, that's really, really true. This other system with the 4 elements, that was thinking, but this, oxygen is definitely real. And furthermore, I am oxygen, and hydrogen, and nitrogen, and carbon, and whatever else. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 others that are common, and many others that are there in trace amounts. Iron, I guess there's a little bit of. We have this deep, deep sense, this is how it really is. This is how I really am. This is what is really going on at the end of the day, is that there's nitrogen and hydrogen and carbon and whatever the others are. I should probably take a chemistry class so I can do a better job of relaying it, but you get the idea. Oh, the sense, this is real. I am this. And well, is it? Is that true? Is it the case that that's all that there is? There's just these elements, and they are me and I am them, and there's nothing else beyond that. Is that true? It's a very important question. Very important that we are not confused about the answer to that question. And well, let's face it, we're pretty confused about the answer to that question. We in the modern world very deeply believe that at the end of the day, actually, that's all that there is going on. At the end of the day, actually, there's only matter and energy. If there's experience, then experience is something that comes out of that matter and energy. If there's a sense of self, then that's just a sort of accident. Happened by mistake, almost. There was just these elements, and then over a long time, they sort of accidentally became conscious. They sort of accidentally acquired this epiphenomenon of having a sense of experience. Awareness sort of somehow came into existence as a result of, or coming out of, these basic elements. We deeply, deeply believe this at this time in history, and use this idea to win. We use this idea to manipulate the physical world around us so that it does what we want it to do. There's a certain element of truth in this idea, the sense that atoms and molecules are all there are at the end of the day, that there isn't really anyone here. It's true in a certain way. It has a certain element of truth to it. And also it ignores and skips over a bunch of stuff, treats that as secondary, as sort of like questions that we'll figure out in a couple decades. You know, how does the mind originate? How does experience originate? That kind of thing. Just kind of shoves that off to the side. And due to those two things, due to having a certain kind of accuracy in terms of making predictions of a certain sort, and in terms of skipping over a bunch of stuff, shoving a bunch of stuff to the side, pretending that it doesn't matter, that view has been able to take over the world. You know, we're able to, for example, cut down an entire forest of trees and then turn those trees into houses, because we look at the forest and we say, well, at the end of the day, all that's going on there in that forest is carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, a couple other trace elements. So it doesn't matter. That's just atoms in a certain configuration, and we're going to chop down all those trees and make those atoms be in a different configuration, which is more preferable to us. It's more preferable to me. For example, a house. And then we'll have a house. How wonderful. In the sense, it doesn't really matter. There isn't really anyone there. There isn't really anything there. And so it's fine to just raise that forest, take all the wood, because it's wood. It's just a material. It's a piece of matter, and assemble that into a structure that suits our preferences. And someone may say, well, there are animals in that forest, and we say, yeah, but at the end of the day, that's just more nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen in certain configurations, and does it really matter if it's in that configuration? You know, this deep sense that actually it's fine, it doesn't matter. And yet, at the same time, we also see that, well, there's this self here, there's this person here. It seems to be that there's something that has experience in the universe, and that's really confusing. We cling so tightly to this idea, this thought, this belief that our consciousness depends on the earth element, that it comes out of the earth element. We cling to the earth element, and this idea that our consciousness is coming out of the earth element, or is in the earth element, or is based on the earth element, or carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, cling so tightly that it becomes very confusing that there's anyone here. It's sort of weird. Why am I here? I have the sense maybe I actually shouldn't be here. And a lot of the time we make use of even spiritual practices as a way of resolving that issue that we've created by thinking about things in a certain way. So, for example, come to Buddhism and we hear something like the Buddha pointed out that there was this non-self, that self can't be found anywhere. And so we say, aha, that's it. Buddhism says that actually, if I just pay close enough attention to this experience, then I won't be here anymore. There won't be experience anymore. There'll just be hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and a few other trace elements. And this mistake of experience, this mistake of consciousness, then won't depend on any of that. How nice. It'll just be gone, shoved aside. I've gotten rid of this self that I have been so confused about. This problem, this quagmire of experience. Whew. Problem solved. Use spirituality to do that in various ways. Get rid of this self so that we can fully buy in to this view that there isn't anyone there. Well, just no more than simply notice that entire thing, this whole idea, this sense that there is only hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and a few other trace elements, that all of that is based on thinking. All of that is thinking. We are proposing that. In each moment we propose that. That's a proposition, that's a suggestion, an assumption that we are making. We're continually imposing using thinking. And say, there's only nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, and a few other trace elements. And we say that again and again and again. Anyone asks us about it, and we forcefully reiterate that. When someone says to us something like, you can talk to trees. Someone says something like that to us, and we just say, there's only nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and a few other trace elements. That's all there is. As though somehow that should disagree with or disprove the statement, you can talk to trees. Trees are sentient beings that you can interact with and engage with and have actually quite deep relationships with. And say, there's only nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, and a few other elements, as though that somehow disproves it, not noticing that that's a thought. It's a proposition. That's an assumption that we are just sort of asserting, putting forward again and again and again. That yes, there are experiments, there's scientific method, all of that I'm not disagreeing with. I'm not saying that those aren't useful ways of looking at things, that those don't yield valid results. Just that isn't the thing that's happening as we put forth that view again and again and again. In the sense, that somehow by believing in this, it will be okay. So Shariputra's advice here is train thus. Train yourself so that your consciousness doesn't depend on these elements, doesn't depend on these views, doesn't depend on these ways of seeing things. Train yourself so that your consciousness doesn't depend on the notion earth. Now, it's worth asking, is that all Shariputra is saying? It's worth asking that. Is it the case that all Shariputra is saying is stop thinking? Or not really stop thinking. He's not saying stop thinking. This is actually very important. I said that, I apologize. It's confusing. He's not really saying stop thinking. He's saying train yourself so that you don't grasp at the earth element and your consciousness doesn't depend on the earth element. Is he just saying don't, is he just saying try not to see your consciousness as dependent on the earth element? Is that all it is? This is a good question. This is a very good question. It's worth asking this question and carefully examining it. I was having dinner the other day with a site reliability engineer friend of mine. So for those who don't know, I was long before I came to the point of not being able to operate a Zoom conference in a past life, I was a site reliability engineer. That is someone who basically fixes computers. Someone who in fact fixes a lot of computers at once. That's what you mean. That's why they have the big fancy title. So if someone fixes one computer at a time, then there may be an IT person or a system administrator. If someone fixes a lot of computers at once, then they're a site reliability engineer. And so I fixed a lot of computers at once. So I was a site reliability engineer. And I was having dinner the other day with a friend who is currently a site reliability engineer. And we were on the topic, as often comes up, of computers, of, in particular, really the computer gods. We're really talking about the computer gods, which is, to be frank, what site reliability engineers talk about when they get together. We don't really just talk about computers, we talk about the deities of computers. We talk about the various entities involved in the functioning of computers. The gnomes and gods and demons and such that you have to appease and pray to in the proper ways in order to make the computers go. Very interesting. The sort of most materialistic of professions is just computer programming is also, as far as I can tell, one of the ones that is clearest on the fact that like actually what you need to do is pray the right way to the computer. And it helps if you push the buttons in the right order so that the code comes out without an error. But really the thing that's going on here is that the gnomes have been appeased. When we're not confused about that. You have to have confidence. It's actually your internal state that matters. You have to have faith and trust and not be afraid of the computer. And then, yes, you type in the code the right way and there aren't any errors and then it works. Anyway, so he and I were having this sort of conversation as we do about computers. And he just at one point said this fantastic thing, this great phrase. He just said, all told, I think it's something like, all told, seems like it was a mistake to have taught sand to think. Seems like it may have been a mistake to have taught sand to think. So sand, of course, is referring to another of those elements in the periodic table. Yes, silicon. That's what sand is. If you look at a beach, there are countless grains of sand all over the beach. That's silicon, I suppose. There's silicon in those grains of sand. Those grains of sand are made of silicon, or so the current system says. And we humans, through a laborious and intensive and confusing and somewhat mystical process, you consider the people who actually did this and read of the other things that they wrote, taught sand to think. We managed to harvest silicon and convert it into something that's capable of thinking in a sort of way. It's capable of having thoughts. So we're looking at a screen right now, and there's sort of a bunch of thoughts that are being thought by silicon. We suppose that those thoughts connect with sensory experience of a certain sort. Yes, there are webcams throughout the world, and those images are being captured repeatedly, and silicon is thinking about those images in a certain way, and as a result of that, the images are arranged in a certain form in front of us on the screen. I just said, maybe it was a mistake to have taught silicon to think. Maybe it was a mistake to have taught sand to think. I was talking about the various issues that have come up around computing and may come up in the future around computing as, for example, we develop more and more powerful artificial intelligence. I said, don't know about that. And then he said, or I said, I forget who said, but one of us said, this is only slightly worse than having taught carbon to think. Yes, so we spent a long time teaching carbon to think. We spent a long time teaching carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen to think. That was really hard. That was really, really hard, and that took a really, really long time. Yes, it took a very, very long time, and it was extremely challenging. But through enormous effort, through inconceivable effort, we succeeded at teaching carbon to think. We succeeded at training so that we clung to carbon, and our consciousness depended on carbon. We succeeded at training so that we clung to nitrogen, and our consciousness depended on nitrogen. Training so that we clung to hydrogen, and our consciousness depended on hydrogen. And so on with oxygen and the rest. So it's worth asking the question, is Shariputra here referring simply to this way of seeing things, or is there something deeper than that that he may also be suggesting? It's worth asking that question. And especially at a time like this, when we are so intimate with the limitations of that way of doing things. So there's this pandemic, many people are dying, there's existential risk, many more people are in great danger of dying. What would it mean? What would it be like? Is it possible? Is this referring to anything at all? When Shariputra is saying, train yourself thus. I will not cling to the earth element, and my consciousness will not depend on the earth element. Worth asking that question. What's he referring to? Is that something real? Is that realizable? Is that possible? So again, I'll just say my claim here, the thing I'm advising or offering from my position here in this chair, seat, simply to look at that question, to consider that question. Using the clarity and sense of urgency that comes from this familiarity with death and illness, with the limitations of consciousness dependent on the elements, to ask, is there something beyond that? Is anything beyond that? Is that all that's going on here? It may just be an interesting question to consider. I'm not taking any particular stance here. You're not hearing me make a claim, I hope, or if you are, then let's talk about it. Maybe I am, and that's a mistake, and please correct me. Beyond that, it's worth looking closely at that question and noticing the ways that we may be in various ways assuming an answer, in various ways believing that there is an answer that depends on some assumption that we've been carrying around. And then we can just ask, well, does that assumption make sense? Is that a reasonable assumption to make? Is it possible to change directions? Spent a long time going in this direction of depending more and more fully on earth, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, silicon. Is there another direction? would that be? Does it exist? Is it worth looking in that direction? Is it worth going in that direction? Is it possible to go in that direction? Worth just considering that question. And again, seeing how challenging it has been to get here and how much suffering and confusion has been involved in the process, to cultivate kindness, cultivate kind thinking, and cultivate kind action. We're here right now, we have these bodies, we have this experience, we have these thoughts. What would it mean to be kind? Seeing that we have come to this place, this existence based on elements of various sorts. How to be kind, how to be nice, how to be gentle with those elements. And to remind ourselves again and again that we are here, there's someone here. There is an experience happening right now, and that experience includes joy and pain and sorrow and grief and happiness and love, connection. And if that's true of us, if that's true of this bundle of whatever it is, elements or whatever, that may be true of other bundles of elements. We look somewhere else and we see another person, that person's also having an experience. We have to remind ourselves of that because we're so it's so often stuck on this view, in the sense that they don't, that there isn't anyone there. Remind ourselves that person also has an experience, and I don't actually understand it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what that person's life is. And person, of course, means other humans and also means animals, plants, insects, birds, trees. Perhaps that even means stones, rocks, boards, pieces of wood. There's often a sense that it has to end somewhere, you know? There's been a lot of ink spilled and a lot of grief produced over fighting over this question of where you draw the line. Who gets to count as alive? Who gets to count as mattering, and who doesn't? So in the modern world, we tend to say that really at the end of the day, I am the only one who matters. Secretly, we say that to ourselves. But publicly to other people, we say humans are the ones that matter. The humans are the ones that matter, and everyone else is kind of like less than human, because humans have the special thing that the others don't. Whatever that is, you know, thinking in a certain way. Or we say, well, okay, the mammals matter, but no one other than that. Or we say, maybe the line is at birds, or maybe the line is at plants. We feel like we have to draw the line somewhere. These people get to count and those don't. My experience, though, it actually is just isn't true. You don't have to draw the line somewhere. You don't have to draw the line anywhere. You can be kind to yourself, and the way that you are kind to yourself is the way that you are kind to other humans, is the way that you are kind to animals, is the way you're kind to trees, is the way that you're kind to stones. If you're folding your clothes, you fold your clothes with respect. You lovingly fold the clothes. You're being kind to the clothes. That isn't any different from being kind to this body. You're walking somewhere, you're kind to everything that you walk over, everyone that you walk over. It's just this process of caring, this process of kindness, this process of compassion, and that doesn't have to be limited in any way. You're putting dishes away, you put the dishes away respectfully. It's respectful to the other humans in the room, but it's also respectful to the dishes. And it's very significant to notice that those aren't in conflict. You have the sense that I'm going to, I don't know what, break the dishes by putting them away so fast because they don't matter, and the only thing that matters is the other humans, but that doesn't actually happen. In our lives, we're in a bunch of situations in which we can be kind to everyone, or we can be unkind to everyone. It's all just this whole one kindness. So let's practice a little bit of that kindness together now. We'll begin once again with this breath and body. Allowing this breath and body to settle into a posture conducive to practice. And feeling the touch of our body against our body, our clothes against our body against the ground. Feeling as well this flow of connectivity. That if our body is perfectly still, then There's nothing wrong with that, and yet it may be that our body is moving. And even if we are physically still, we can still feel movement, connection throughout the body. The breath rises and falls, our heart beats. If there are places of tension, you can still feel movement around and even perhaps within that tension. And feeling as well if there's any sense of heat, temperature, hot or cold, warm or cool. Noticing perhaps that that temperature shifts and changes moment after moment. Parts of our bodies that are cool may warm up, and parts of our bodies that are warm may cool down. And noticing as well if there's any expansion, contraction, rise and fall. Feeling the wind against our skin, or feeling the wind of our breath on the inside of our body. Or hearing or seeing this tendency of phenomena to fill, experience, and vanish, and fall to nothing. There isn't any need to do anything about any of that. There isn't any need to make experience be that way. Try to get that to happen. You can simply notice what's happening in this experience as it is. try to make experience expand, fill the universe, and see that that making, that grasping just doesn't really work. Doesn't fill the universe any more than it did before. Try to make it go away, we see that that grasping doesn't really work. Doesn't go away any faster than it did before. Instead of that, moment after moment, we allow this experience to unfold. We train in allowing this experience to unfold, which means that we explore allowing and not allowing. See what happens when we try to make experience be a certain way. See what happens when we stop trying to make experience be a certain way. And it's all that's meant by training. We allow this to be imperfect. We allow this imperfection to be beautiful. And as we do this, being aware of our thinking, letting thoughts come and go, and seeing if, as we do this practice, seeing if there isn't any inclination towards kindness. And as we sit here and we allow experience to come and go, our thoughts come and go, each thought that comes and goes, see if there isn't any inclination towards kindness in that thought. The intention to be of use in some way to someone. Any intention to be of use to anyone in any way. And just for a little while now, let's spend some time intentionally cultivating kind thinking. You can do that in any way you like, or you can simply repeat or consider the phrase, "May we be happy." May we be happy. May we be happy. May we be happy. Again, simply staying with this experience, letting it unfold, letting it come and go, repeating the phrase, "May we be happy." Allowing each experience to come and go, each thought to come and go, as we continue this cultivation of happiness. Okay, so now we have a time for a little bit of discussion. A little bit less time than usual, so sorry about that, but some time to talk about our experience or bring any questions or confusion or insights or anything else that we'd like to offer at this time to the group.
Joshin, your guided meditation towards the end answered my question of what all this had. You switched somewhere in your talk between the elements and kindness. And I thought maybe I bleeped out because I didn't. And then in the guided, of course it was there for me today, like it always is. Let go of my attachment. There's a softness and a willingness to be kind. And so I just wanted to report that there was confusion then. And today particularly, you spoke to things that I relate to, except for bassoon scent. I don't relate to that. But elements, waves, how things are put together. And it's fascinating to me to let go of both the earth element and the water and the air. And because in some senses, that's what I do for a living, working with his and drugs. So it's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's, I think, as you say, it was one of those times where the connection became clear through the practice of it, not so much through the talking about it. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, it is a really fun adventure. Yeah, especially the point about how we have vocations that involve the elements, and also that isn't in conflict with practice that moves beyond the elements.
Because obviously just dealing with the elements doesn't solve all mental and physical problems. It obviously doesn't. And kindness is certainly an element that is important in whatever somebody's getting. It can be. And it was making me think too, because it's in the offering of the kindness or being the kindness rather than the other person receiving it, because sometimes people just aren't receptive to it. That's got to be okay also.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. And thank you for having the view of the oak people. It's wonderful seeing them also.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I hope that gets onto the stream as well. I don't know how Zoom streams work, but I hope it gets onto the video that shows up later, rather.
I can tell you about that. You have an option to look at it in gallery view or in spotlight view. So when the video is produced, those two options are there, and you pick
great.
which one you're going to do.
Great. Cool.
Tech support.
Yeah, really.
Hey, Yanir here. I have a question unless there's anything more to be said on the last one.
No, please.
Okay, so something that attracted me about the topic today in the email, and maybe I missed it in the discussion, was the question you said, we may wonder, is skillful thinking even possible? And so I've been thinking a little bit about that topic this week myself, so that's why I was really interested. And let me just take a second to articulate it a little better. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know if you could speak more to that. Like, can we, if we have gotten to a point, and it's a fairly early stage in your practice where you realize that you're not producing your own thoughts. So then how can you even trust them? I think is a very interesting question. Where do they come from? If they're not yours, whose are they? And if you can't even control the stream of thoughts because they seem to just either be random or follow some kind of association, but still just kind of come and go, when you're just sitting there and they just keep coming and sometimes completely random, what do they mean? What worth do they have, right? And when we operate in our daily lives, we use them. We think we're using them intentionally. We may not be. I was in another discussion a week ago where someone made the suggestion to set an intention. Wake up in the morning, set an intention for the day. It's a powerful tool, and I don't disagree with that. It is a powerful technique. It will help guide your actions throughout the day. It works. But what's that mechanism like? Who's actually doing the intending, and so on. So, could you speak a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. So, two answers. The first answer is that, as you say, we see through the illusion of thought more and more completely. So it seems like we're thinking these thoughts, they're ours, and we act according to them. Through practice, we more and more clearly see that these thoughts are just coming and going. We see more and more clearly that they aren't ultimately true, that they aren't the source of truth that we had perhaps thought that they were. And then second, that we cultivate beneficial thought. We cultivate thought that is based on ethical principles, based on kindness, based on, as you say, intention. That we use thinking to hold ourselves to ethical standards. So the Buddha was clear on this point. Shariputra is also clear on this point in this text. It isn't that you should not think. We see more and more clearly how transient, unreliable, untrustworthy thoughts are. And yet, it isn't the case that you should just not think. In the same way, it isn't the case that you should just not see or hear or feel. We can try to prevent that from happening, and usually it won't go very well. There are, of course, certain stages in practice in which it's important to be able to go totally beyond thinking. At certain times, under certain circumstances, we want to be able to set aside thinking completely, but most of the time, we don't. We don't need to have that as a goal. Most of the time, it's rather that we cultivate a more and more kind or beneficial relationship with thinking. So we, on the one hand, see it clearly, allow it to come and go, and see it for what it is. We're not confused about what it is. We see that it's just sense phenomena coming and going, and therefore our blind faith in it is broken up. And on the other hand, we are kind. We practice kindness. We practice intentionally cultivating this garden of mind. We have this mind, and it just thinks. It's just going to keep thinking. We can try to make it stop thinking, and it won't. Again, under certain circumstances, we can go totally beyond thoughts, but most of the time, here we are. So we cultivate those thoughts. We cultivate our relationship with this mind. We befriend thinking. We make connection with, friendship with, ethical relationship with our mind. And through that ongoing relationship, a relationship of our mind and us, whatever that means. Again, even that is very confusing, but through that relationship, it's hard to say exactly what that relationship is between, but that relationship clearly does exist. It clearly is there. Hard to say what it is or who it's between or what it's about, but it's clearly there. We have this relationship between our mind and us, and also these relationships with everything else in the universe. So we just work on that relationship in the way that we work on every relationship, with the intention of kindness. That's basically the skillful or ethical use of thinking according to the Buddha as I understand it. So see clearly, be nice.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that helps to clarify your exercise with kindness now for me a bit more, why we were going down that road. That makes sense. And in some ways it's about self-compassion. If you believe that their thinking comes from a quote unquote self. And, yeah, that's good because we all have negative thoughts. It's and those are the ones that can be the most painful, and where you wonder where they come from. And personally, I'm much better now, but I used to suffer from like obsessive negative thoughts, and that was very painful. And it took a long time for me to deal with that. And of course, these practices have been a big help.
Big time.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, really. And Peace Pilgrim says, if we knew how powerful thinking was, we would never again think a negative thought. Yeah, so as you have seen and as you say, it's something that we all work with. It's a journey that we're on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate what you said about the mind as a garden. And what came up for me when you said that was loving awareness around the moments when I cry, when times feel too hard, quote unquote, too hard, right? And when tears come, it's almost like the tears are watering, perhaps, the garden. And perhaps the chaos of thoughts is like a storm, right? And there's rainbows too. There's colors in it all, and I'll take away and just working with imagination through times of chaos to bring in could be a cool equanimity practice.
Yeah, really. Yeah, water, of course, in addition to being one of the elements, is a really significant metaphor in actually strangely many spiritual traditions. So the Buddha famously used water in describing the jhanas, that there's this cool water that drenches, steeps, and fills this body, or this garden, you might say. And also Teresa of Avila. So Saint Teresa of Avila, this Christian mystic from the, I believe, 12th century. So my mom is nodding. In her description of the path, talks about these mansions, and the mansions also make use of this metaphor of water in almost the same way. The point where like these people had to have been talking about the same thing. It doesn't make sense for them to have not been talking about the same thing because their metaphors are so close. It's kind of weird. Sort of like, when did Teresa sneak off and read the Nikayas? Weird. But of course, you can also just let it drench you, and then you can say whatever you want about it. Great, so Oak is keeping us on task. We have 5 minutes left, so maybe if there's one more brief share or question. Okay, and do we have anything to say as Oak right now? If not, that's okay, but any announcements that we'd like to make? Okay. Good. Yeah, so Oak is right now practicing what we preach. So I preached today doing as little as possible and doing what must be done. And so Oak is doing that right now. We're doing as little as possible and doing what we have to do to move along the various goals that we have. So within that, please stay in touch. Friend us. I guess we friend each other now on Facebook or whatever, so do that and get in touch. We'd love to talk to you about anything, anytime. Maybe have a video chat. Maybe you can come and visit. We're happy to stand a football field apart and shout at each other, or you can have lunch with us too if that's allowed by the law and your COVID safety protocol is compatible with that. It's all good. So be in touch, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
So nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Again soon.